Well, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to conference and welcome to ThinkTent 2024. I'm Andrew Allison and I'm the head of campaigns for PopCon. Just a few housekeeping rules, I suppose, to start off with. The details of all our programme of events have been placed on the seats, so you know exactly what we're doing. Of course, they are in the conference programme online, they're in the conference handbook, they're on the app. They're on our website, they're on the ThinkTent's website, so there's no excuse for you saying, well, we didn't know something was happening. So that's all done. We're also being live streamed on YouTube today, so, watch your P's and Q's and questions, keep it clear. Well, it's indeed, Andrea, yeah. I will just introduce my four panelists first, and then I'm going to make another announcement after that. But to my left here is Wendy Morton, who's the MP for Aldridge-Brownhills, has been since 2015. She was a Minister of State in the Transport and Justice Departments, was the Chief Whip. But prior to her being elected, she ran an electronics business, and she has served as a local association chair, a party vice chair. So she knows that the issues that are being faced by both the elected and voluntary sides of the party. To my right is Claire Bullivant, who is the former CEO of the Conservative Democratic Organisation. She's the co-founder and editor of the Conservative Post. And at both organisations, she's been pushing for additional involvement in party management and decision-making. To, I'm going to say my far left, I'm sure she's not, is Becky. We know it's going to come next for Andrea. Is Becky Walsh, who's the director of Quadrangle Consulting, which is a consultancy for those attempting to relocate to the UK. She's the chair of the Hereford and South Herefordshire Conservative Association, and she joined the Conservative Party's candidates list during the last Parliament, so has a recent experience of the party selection process, which she will be telling us about. And yes, to my far right is my very good friend, Dame Andrea Jenkyns. There is nothing like a dame. Andrea was elected in 2015 for Morley and Outwood, but sadly wasn't elected for the new seat of South West Leeds at Morley this year. She's been a whip, a government minister, a Brexit champion, a Spartan, and she's done a lot, or did a lot in those 9 years in Parliament. Right, before I start, we have an opinion panel, and 470 Conservative Party members responded to our most recent opinion panel. And we've asked various questions, and if I could have the next slide, please. I feel like Chris Whitty. And it is the correct one as well. That is good. So almost 77% of respondents agreed or strongly agreed with the statement, the majority of members of the Conservative Party board should be directly elected by party members. And we have the next slide. When it comes to the selection of candidates, almost 90% agreed or strongly agreed with the following statement. Now, we've had to be brevity on a slide, but the full statement was the choice of a candidate must normally rest with the local constituency association, which should also have the discretion to include in the selection process one or more candidates not on the candidates list, and if selecting a candidate not on the list, to nominate them for approval for inclusion on the list. And there were statements in the Phoenix Project report that came out a few weeks ago, which was chaired by Lord Forsyth. And the next slide, please. 70% agreed or strongly agreed that the threshold for triggering a vote of confidence should be raised from 15% to 30% of all Conservative MPs, and that the names of those MPs submitting letters to the chairman of the 1922 committee be made public at the time of submission. Now, I think we've got to remember with 121 Conservative MPs on the current threshold, that would be 19 MPs could trigger a confidence vote, which is far too small. We know that Andrea, for example, sent a letter of confidence in against Rishi Sunak because she had the balls, the guts to actually tell us all. So I'm sure that you probably will be in favour of that last report. Okay, enough from me. We'll start with Wendy, who'll speak for about 5 minutes, and if you could also refer to what you've just heard there. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Andrew, and ladies and gentlemen, it's good to be here this afternoon, and it's good that you're all here in Birmingham, though I do think the weather has changed, and I think that's rain that we can hear on the roof, but never mind. So I just really wanted to tell you a little bit about my journey in politics, because I think it is so relevant to the discussions that we as a party are having now and we need to have. So when I first got involved, I was an activist, and I still view myself as an activist and very much a part of the voluntary party. If I'm honest, it was my husband that was more into going to Conservative dues than I was, and then he encouraged me to go along. And then I was encouraged to stand in a local by-election for the area that I grew up in. And I was very fortunate. The local association taught me how to campaign, how to deliver leaflets, how to do a dawn raid, how to do the GOTV, all of that sort of thing. So I have every respect for every member of our party, and we are nothing without our volunteers. From there, obviously I became a councillor. Yes, I'm an MP now. It took me 3 attempts to make it. So I've had a bit of experience in different parts of the country, Yorkshire, the North East, and now I'm very proud to be here in the West Midlands. But there's one thing that I have really picked up and learnt along that journey. Not just that we're nothing without our volunteers, but we have to value our volunteers, value our members. We are a membership organisation. And every association is different. Some are better at fundraising, some are better at campaigning, but we have to share that knowledge. And some associations are huge, some are very, very tiny. And I think the other key thing for me is that we've come through a bruising set of elections, however we look at it. Although I would say in Walsall we did rather well, and we made a gain in May. And we, after 9.5 years, we actually managed to take the final ward that we'd been working on for a long time. That was down to a lot of teamwork, a lot of hard work, probably blood, sweat and tears as well. But there's a huge amount of knowledge in our party. And I think where we're at now is the ideal moment to actually listen to our party, listen to our members. I am one of only 121 MPs. So we do not and should not have all of the answers for everything. It's also important that we don't think that everything that we've done in the past was wrong. I think it's important that through that learning we take the good stuff, we reinforce it, we build on it, recognising that the task that we have, I believe, is about reinstilling our values, explaining who we are, what we are all about, in our actions, in our policies, working MPs, local councillors, activists, candidates to all together, and making sure that people out there trust us again, and that we are relevant for today's country and for today's communities. So I think the questions that have been posed in the survey actually go to the heart of some of these questions. I mean, should the board be directly elected? I think it's 44% said yes. I certainly think a good proportion of it should be elected. MPs, we have so many positions on the party board, which I think is right. But I think if we truly want to trust and value the voluntary party, there should be more positions on there for that are elected. Should associations be allowed to choose their candidates? Now, I'm sure everybody's got a view on this, but I think what we should not do is impose candidates onto associations, and I know that really, really upsets and irritates and angers associations, because if you want a good relationship between your member of parliament or your candidate and your activist base, you have to, in my view, have a buy-in. So therefore, what's wrong with having, even if it is one, or that ability, if a seat comes up very late in the day, have the ability for an association to say, we've got a few local people, can we put them through the PAB really, really quickly? I think it's important for the integrity of the party that we always do, the checks and balances that we need to. But I do think it's important that there is that option. And I think the other question about votes of confidence, I mean, I come back to the point, 121 members of Parliament. We are such a small group, and we're sort of seeing that now, even in the leadership campaign, that we've had the first votes to whittle it down to 2. My view was always that the voluntary party, our party members must have a view. They must have a vote. I mean, personally, I would have just sent all 6 candidates out to the wider membership and let us all, have that choice, because we are part of one big family. But I do think there is a sense of I don't think colleagues, members of Parliament should necessarily be made to make their name public in a vote. It is a ballot at the end of the day. If they want to, and Andrea, I fully respect you because you made public your choice to do that. But I don't think MPs should be forced to. But I do think that 15% of the current party size is such, again, a small number of colleagues to be making that decision. So I think there's a lot for us to consider, but I don't think we should mull on it or dwell on it for too long. Once we've got a new leader in place, I want us to start and make some of these changes, move forward and look to the future, because when we look at what Keir Starmer's doing and Labour at the minute, we need to be capitalising on this, and it's not enough just for the government to be failing. If we're not credible, the electorate will still think twice about coming back to us. We can't afford to let that happen.
Thank you. I remember being at a Fringe meeting about 15 years ago, and it was with Eric Pickles, and he was asked if he would stand to become a Conservative councillor, and he was told, "Don't worry, it won't take over your life."
He said something similar to me when I became a councillor, and said you can do as little or as much as you want. The little never came into it.
I know. Claire.
Thanks, Andrew. Can everyone hear me? Yep. Well, welcome to my hometown, everyone. Sorry about the rain, but it's lovely to see everyone here. As Andrew said, I'm the founder of the Conservative Post. I also co-founded the CDO, and I'll shortly be launching the Great British Pack, a movement dedicated to empowering the grassroots, safeguarding our country's freedoms, and preparing Britain for the battle ahead, especially for the crucial 2029 election. Because you see, I sit here before you with an unshakable belief in the future of conservatism, in the power of democracy, and also our members. And most importantly, I believe in the magic of people power, because I've seen it in action. Now, I may be relatively new to British politics, having spent most of my adult life in the States, but let me tell you, I've come back with a vengeance. I've seen firsthand what the socialists did to California after living there for 15 years. And I'll be damned if I'm going to sit back and let it happen here. We need to get organised. We need to stop these socialists. And we can do in our tracks. And the way to do it is by reinvigorating our grassroots, empowering our members, and reclaiming the soul of our party. Now, I first saw the incredible power of our membership when I launched the Boris ballot. It was when 60 of our MPs, they deposed our democratically elected Prime Minister, Boris Johnson. I was outraged, and I know many of you were too. Nobody should ever depose a democratically elected Prime Minister. Nobody but the people. So I decided to act. As per the Constitution, I found out that if we gathered 10,000 party members' signatures, we could force a national convention and put Boris back on the ballot. We hit that target. In fact, we smashed it. We actually got 14,000 verified member signatures. But sadly, somebody at CCHQ didn't let us know in time. It was too late to save Boris. But I learned a very valuable lesson. People power is real. With enough grit, organisation and determination, we can move mountains. It was a lesson in the raw power of democracy. And the members loved it. I still get emails every single day from people signing that petition still, asking what else they can campaign for. There's an army out there, ready and waiting to help. They want to get more involved. We need as a party to harness that incredible grassroots energy. We need to run campaign after campaign after campaign, and we need to steer our party back to true democracy and conservatism. And that's why I'm launching the Great British Pack, which you'll be hearing about very soon. It's got lots of moving parts to it, but one special part is going to be a brand new app that will hopefully revolutionise how we do politics in this country in the future. For goodness sake, it's 2024. We have digital devices at our fingertips. Why not use them to put the power back in the hands of our members? Our app will be able to get the grassroots to vote on every policy, every decision, daily if they want to. With 10,000 signatures at the click of a button, we can demand those national conventions. We can steer our ship back to democracy, and we can show those in power that the collective membership voice will never be ignored again. This is real empowerment, and it will bring our members back in droves. They'll become a type of virtual MP, as it were. And it will help us also ensure that our MPs, who we send to Westminster, aren't Lib Dems wearing blue rosettes, but true Tories who stand up for our values, free markets, free speech, free people, low taxes, small government, proper common sense conservatism. Never again will a few shadowy individuals be solely responsible for choosing our representatives in Westminster. We, the people, must have a say in selecting them. And did you know we also have the power to deselect them if we so want to? Again, it's in our constitution. It just needs orchestrating. So, guys, we need to start flexing our muscles. We have the tools in our arsenal, and we just need to use them. But how will this help the current situation, you may be thinking? Labour has a daunting majority. Our politicians are outnumbered. They're all pretty powerless, to be honest, for the next 5 years. We all know Labour are going to run roughshod over us all. But once again, the people have tools at our disposal. Lawfare, grassroots activism and sheer determination to hold Labour to account. We need members to be the generals, to orchestrate these campaigns across the country. Take, for example, one of the first things I want to do, the Ed Miliband's decision to ban the North Sea oil and gas licences. Has he considered the Net Zero Act that he loves so very much? Surely the environmental impact of importing energy all the way from China and Russia is far more detrimental to planet Earth. You know, that carbon footprint's crazy. So we could tie Ed and his, plans up in knots. We can legally challenge these things over the next 5 years. We can tie them up in knots again and again, and we can delay their reckless policies until we're back in power. This is our moment, ladies and gentlemen. We need to invigorate our grassroots, empower our members, reclaim the soul of our party, and stop Labour in their tracks. It's time to bring back the fighting spirit of Thatcher, the optimism of Churchill, and the relentless determination of Boris. We have faced adversity before, and we have triumphed. Now we must do it again in the digital age. The Conservative Party's best days are ahead, not behind us, and it's just a click away.
Thank you, Claire. I feel better for that. I think we were defeated. We know we were roundly defeated, but there's no need to be defeatist. And one thing that I commented on right from the very beginning was that Labour may have a huge majority. It may be a mile wide, but it's only an inch deep, and it's already unravelling. We need to be ready, without a doubt. Andrea.
Okay. Rowing to go there.
You are. I could see. Yeah.
Well, good to see everybody in here. I assume this is the only place here where we've got two Conservatives. Now, look, we've got to be honest, why are we here? We're here because we've had MPs and ministers and party leaders who's failed to listen to grassroots members. And I'm not convinced at this stage that all of our leadership candidates have learnt the lessons. And so I really believe we're at this tipping point. And so we've really got to choose carefully with our party leader. Now, I seriously believe that had party members had chosen the leader when it was in Theresa May's time or when it was in Rish's time, then we wouldn't be in this situation as we are today. And so I really do think that it should always go to party members. And I agree with what Wendy said. All 6 candidates should have gone to membership when we've got so little MPs what's left. And look, we are bruised as a party. Kevin, stand up. Kevin was my colleague. Kevin Foster, he lost his seat, a true Conservative here, and we are badly bruised. But we need to build trust with the public, with party members, and we actually need to show that we're listening. And I think another issue where we've gone wrong is we've gone too far to the centre, and there's not much difference where policy is concerned between us and Labour. Now, I thought I'd be a bit of a rebel last week. Surprise, surprise. I got hold of a press pass and I went to the Reform conference just to see what it was like. And it was actually like it was here under Boris. You know, the energy, the passion. There's more arrogance and cocksure than we are. You know, we're Conservative with a small c. We're not as flashy as that. But the energy was amazing. And I want our party to be like that again. And I don't think we can ignore reform. Now, if I just take my membership, when Boris was Prime Minister, if you think my seat was Labour for 85 years, I took it off Ed Balls. Thank you. So long ago now. Maybe I need to learn to dance as well and do his route. I had 460 members under Boris. And during Rish's tenure, I went down to 120. So this election was very difficult. I didn't have any activists. I've got my office manager, stroke campaign manager here, and it was a bruising election, wasn't it? But what we found on the doorstep, that there was a big chunk of people who was undecided, but let's face it, they buggered off to reform or they stayed at home. So we cannot ignore reform. And what I did in the lead up to the election, from March onwards, I met with Nigel Farage. I also met with Rishi Sunak. And I said, we need to do some kind of arrangement here, because otherwise we'll have consecutive Labour governments going forward if we don't get our act together. Why are we fighting each other? We should be fighting the socialists who are going to ruin our country. And look what we've seen the last 3 months. It's been dire. And I dread to think what the next 5 years bring. So I went to Rishi. I said, we need a really red meat cabinet reshuffle. We've got to have a war cabinet. Let's make somebody like Pretty Deputy Prime Minister rather than the drip Oliver Dowden. Sorry, I think this has been broadcast. We want somebody there who can actually connect to people. And big cabinet reshuffle. Let's bring people from all the party, from both sides of the party there, to go into an election. Let's get off these planes to Rwanda. Let's see the economy start healing, and try and go as late on in the year as possible. But I also said, as I said, I spoke to Nigel, I spoke to Richard Tice, I spoke to Rishi personally about this. I said, why don't we be radical and think outside the box? We are not going to win at the moment. Look at the polling. So I suggested, in red wall seats, why don't you give the option of MPs standing as a Conservative and Reform ticket? Now, I can see people are thinking, oh, gosh, what will that bring? But it's only like Labour and the Cooperative. Now, when I stood against Ed Balls, he was Labour and the Cooperative. We need to think of a way to bring the centre-right and true Conservatives together again. So I think, please choose carefully this next leader. Now, look at their voting records as well, because some might pretend that they are centre-right, but they're not. If you want to ask me afterwards a true take on each candidate, I can certainly give you that. But please choose carefully, because we're at this tipping point. If we don't choose the right candidate this time, then I'm afraid we'll be forever in opposition and the numbers will dwindle to very little. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And of course, on Tuesday morning at 9 a.m, we are discussing what we need to do with reform. So please book your seats there. And finally, Becky.
Well, absolutely brilliant analysis, and I agree completely. It's power to the members. I mean, I don't think any of us in the room need to take a lesson in what it means to be a Conservative, or to take another survey. I, for one, am quite bored with taking surveys about what it means to be a Conservative. I think anyone who joins the Conservative Party is definitionally someone who knows what they're about. And I think those people are the people who need to have more power. I'm a chairman, and therefore, of course, I want to grow my association. But actually, The thing that shocked me most, and this is with my potential candidate hat on, as in the run-up to the election, was the number of people more experienced than me in the party, wise, older members of the party, who kept telling me, it doesn't matter whether or not you're chosen by an association and they want you on the final list, the chances are that when the SIFT committee joins and a chairman is there, that group will be weak. They will feel weak in the face of CCHQ. Now, I was really surprised to see that that was the case, and to me it was very much to do with the fact that under pressure, association members and chairmen often feel weak in the face of that. I was also quite shocked to discover that the centre had all sorts of views about me that I didn't know that I had about myself. For example, one selection meeting I discovered afterwards that apparently I had the wrong views for Surrey. Now, I don't know what the right views for Surrey are, and I certainly don't know whether I have the right views for Surrey. But the thing that really shocked me was that I had never told anyone what my views were at all. But I tried to tell the centre, the CCHQ, but they'd never asked me. So that was pretty shocking. And the other thing that I found very surprising during the whole process, and many people here have also been candidates along with me, was that, in fact, values, what we thought about anything, really didn't matter. Presentation mattered. We've all done lots of courses about how to look, how not to look, how to sound. We were not asked our views. In fact, we were encouraged not to have any views. We were encouraged to take a lot of selfies. My phone, I've never taken a selfie. I then became a candidate, and my whole phone was just flooded with photographs of myself in front of sort of cul-de-sacs all around the country. I mean, a little bit of self-promotion is good, but I started to feel I was just a sort of prop for a sign. So there was lots of that, not much about what I thought about anything, but a lot of muttering, people wisely saying to me, you better not say that, the centre won't like it, and the centre won't like this. So lots of sense that centre was very powerful, no sense of what the centre actually was, no openness, no transparency, no one would put a name to these people that were muttering darkly about what it meant to be a Conservative. Now, other very odd thing that happened was, as everyone knows who's tried to be a candidate, you're asked to take a psychometric test. Now, one of the questions was, did I consider myself to be a very good actor? Shortly after this, had I ever considered killing my parents? Now, I assure you, I answered no to both those questions. But, I still, to this day, do not know whether I answered correctly. I don't know. But anyway, most of all, what I feel with my candidate's hat on is that we need to stop this obsession with what the centre thinks about anything. I mean, really, we all know what we think. I think overcomplicating this concept of what exactly it means to be a Conservative in the modern age, we don't need this. We know what it means to be Conservative. If the centre needs help, I'm happy to organise plenty of training days. The members can plan for the centre to come and visit us, and we can put them through lots of training days, and they'll learn what it is to be a Conservative just by spending some time with the association and the members. I have 2 children who've recently joined the party. One's 22 and one's 18. And they both said to me as I left, just tell everyone at conference that we just want somebody with some convictions, with some views. So I think what we are taught is on these training courses is the inverse of what people want. So.
It's not just selfies as well, though, is it, Becky? I mean, I've watched loads of videos during the campaign. I suppose this is where the acting bit comes in. Perhaps you have to be rather good to do that. But it's sort of. I'm Becky Walsh. I'm standing outside the local sewage works, and apparently there's an appalling smell on Acacia Avenue, and I'm fighting hard to remove that smell. Right, if I could get the people with the microphones ready, I won't go to them just yet, but just be ready for that. Something that you said, Wendy, and it was about training, and it just brought to mind. God knows how many years ago when I first started knocking on doors and canvassing, but I don't believe anyone ever told me how to do it. And surely this is something that we should be encouraging. You give people do's and don'ts. I don't think anyone's really taught how to write a press release, how to do all sorts of basic things that you need to do in communications, and no one's ever told. And I think that is, there's something that's really lacking inside the party.
I agree. I mean, if I rack my brains and think how was I trained, it was very much on the job or on the candidate's trail.
Yeah.
There was a great agent at the time who helped me, and then that's just how you did it. And I think even now, if we've got a new candidate at local elections, we'll tend to go out together, work within a team. But I think there's definitely a place for training, and even for those of us who've been candidates over a number of elections. The political world, the campaigning world has changed from when I first started, and I don't wish to sound old here, but paper still has a role to play, but there is that social media angle that is increasingly important. So, TikTok, Instagram, goodness knows what else. So I think it's incumbent upon us all to continue to learn. Absolutely. The only courses that I can really remember the focus being on was public speaking. And there's one skill set that I think any candidate, Member of Parliament, or councillor really needs, and that is people skills.
Yeah, exactly.
That ability to connect on the doorstep.
Yeah, that's right.
But maybe you can't teach that.
No, perhaps not. But I think, just looking at the way that we reform the party, and I was just thinking also what Claire said, the fighting spirit is something that I wrote down. But we have to make sure that people are equipped with the right tools, don't we? I mean, basically, that's that. Right, I think I will take some questions. Oh, gosh, already. I will group them into three. I think, did you have your hand up? I thought you did. We'll start off with John there, and then we'll go to you there, and there's a gentleman about 2 rows behind there. So we'll deal with them first. Where are the microphones? Ah, right, brilliant. Go to John Strafford here first.
John Strafford from Beaconsfield. Could I say that all very well looking at just the rules, but actually the whole culture of Conservative Central Office has to change. It is there to serve the members, not to dictate to them. And I will illustrate it by saying this. Claire, your motion got delayed by Central Office when you put in your petition. And I can tell you my experience in Beaconsfield when I moved in 2018 a motion for our AGM of no confidence in Dominic Grieve. What happened was that I got a letter back saying I was not a member of the Conservative Party. Having been a member now 60 years, I found that a bit extraordinary. But I had to then write to Central Office to get them to confirm that I was a member. And by the time they had replied, because they delayed the reply, then I was out of time to put the motion of no confidence at the AGM. But however, fortunately, a motion did go forward to the AGM of no confidence, and it was passed by 180 to 130, overwhelmingly. To which Dominic Grieve said, I'm going to ignore it. To which I said, in which case I'll put down I'll call a special general meeting that not only do we pass a vote of no confidence, but we also start the reselection of a new candidate for Beaconsfield. The night before that special meeting, I got an email from Conservative Central Office saying that I was suspended from the party for a word that I included in a blog 16 years ago, that blog of which had been seen by 500,000 people, and nobody ever complained about it. But it meant that I was not allowed to attend the special general meeting. However, the special general meeting went ahead, and once again it was passed by an overwhelming majority of the members. At which point, Conservative Central Office said to the constituency chairman, who was a parliamentary candidate, if you value your candidacy, then you will not allow this to go any further. And when he protested and they said it was not in accordance with the rules, and I pointed out the rules of the Constitution where it was allowed to be done, and they said we ignore it. And they said, and if you go ahead any further to constituency chairman, we'll suspend the constituency and put our own...
Sorry, John, could you ask the question?
Yes, and that's
yes.
it.
Okay.
I knew John's story, which is why
Yeah.
I was after him to say it.
Now, you've got so much experience, but I know there's a lot who's wanted to ask questions.
I know, but I know what John's story was. I wanted him to say it. That was the reason why I went to him first. This lady, please.
Hi, Lindsay Sharrett from the Wrekin. So, yes, I hear exactly what Becky's saying about the selection process. I'd just like to add as well, people are applying, not hearing anything, and I mean not hearing anything, not any feedback, not your views aren't right for any particular place, just nothing. If the party wants people to engage, and a lot of these people are activists. I mean, I've campaigned for a long time. I've campaigned with Wendy in the Spatula. We need that feedback. So I think in any shake-up in CCHQ, it needs to be considered. If people are giving of their time and wanting to be candidates, if they put their time in, they need to get an adequate response back.
And we go to that gentleman. You just tell us your name, please. Microphone's coming to you. Just tell us your name and where you come from. And try to be brief.
Sam Francis from the BBC. I just wanted to ask the panel who they think is the best leadership candidate to bring forward the changes, or who's the best person for the job.
Right. Wendy, would you like to?
I thought you might come to me first on that one. I think, look, when it comes to the issue of leadership, I was a pretty backer, and I'm not declaring at the moment. But I do think it's a sort of question that you members, should be absolutely asking of the leadership contenders. And we have that opportunity here in Birmingham to be able to do that. I think around some of the other questions, though, Mr. Chairman, around feedback for candidates, I think that is absolutely essential, because you put yourself forward, you do the PAB. I believe you still pay for the privilege of doing that. I think it's therefore incumbent upon us as a party, and particularly CCHQ, to provide that feedback. And then if somebody wants to give it another go, they can learn from that feedback and try again. My message to candidates on the candidates list is always, don't give up. Keep going. But I think the best bit of advice that I was always given was be yourself, because if you're not, you always get found out. And I know, John, you spoke at length and you've got a lot of experience. I must admit, Mr. Chairman, I'm not quite sure what the question was, but I take the point, which is that CCHQ are there not just for the sake of the leadership and a handful of people. They should be there for the whole of the party. And I think now, again, we have an opportunity with a new leader in place when they're elected to rebuild. And that's important that new leader then takes on board the views of the voluntary party and seeks to build or rebuild an organisation that feels like it's a family. A family often has to be a broad family. We all know that. We have close family, we have relatives that are often on the periphery. But it starts with leadership from the top and some really strong grassroots activism. That's how we get back to where we need to be.
Thank you. To those of you who are standing at the back, there are some seats around here if you'd like to rest your weary legs. It's up to you. You can stand, but you can also sit. Andrea.
Wendy, I'd just like to ask, I know that people don't like to reveal who they're backing because they want to get a position in the shadow cabinet, but have you come out for anybody yet?
No, I haven't.
Okay, right.
It's fair to say last time round I was, when it was Liz, I was there from the
you
very
was
beginning.
With Liz, yes,
so
exactly.
I've decided this time I'm just going to take my time.
Okay, right. Right, I'll go to the BBC question first. I know all the candidates. As I said earlier, please look at their voting records. I was initially backing Pretty. Pretty's a Spartan, and I was very sad that that the MPs thought they knew better than what I think.
I was not one of those. I did know.
No, I know you liked Pretty. Yeah. Now, I'm backing Robert Jenrick. Now, Robert, to me, I was his PPS during lockdowns and COVID, etc. And is the only minister who I've worked with over the years who actually stands up to the civil servants. And he was amazing. And one good thing about Robert, he really is very intelligent and he really grasps the brief. And one reason I'm backing him is because he's brave. Now, if you look at the voting records, Robert has, I think it's about 14 times he's rebelled, the other leadership candidates, if you go on the public whip, have never rebelled. And to me, I want someone with some fire in the belly who will fight for true conservatism. So that's why I'm backing Robert. And now back to the candidates list. Well, I was... it certainly needs reforming. I mean, for a start, they let too many Lib Dems into the party. That's why we got the problem. But, I mean... They said to me, I went through the PAB and they put me on the City Seats initiative, which meant it'd have to be a no-hoper, or you'd be the cannon fodder. And I went for feedback and I said, why have I got on this? I'm not sure really. Well, I see you haven't been to university. I said, no, I went straight into work. So I then decided to get a degree. I studied economics at the Open Uni, International Relations at Lincoln, where I was a counsellor, just to show that I could do it. And that should not really stop you getting on the full candidates list. So I persevered for 18 months, going to the candidates department every 6 months, and finally they let me onto the full list, and then I wanted a challenge, so that's when I went for the Ed Balls seat. But it's got to change. There's too much nepotism still within the party, I mean, I saw some of the candidates as well who's become MPs recently, was on GB News, and if you think of all the stuff going on in the party, and this particular person said, what would you like to do in this parliament? I'd like to ensure it's 50% women. And I'm like, for God's sake, we've got cost of living. I don't care if the whole cabinet is men. I want us to live in a meritocracy. And I think that is so out of touch. So I do think that rather than CCHQ sending 2 or 3 people to the associations to choose, let them see the full list. Sorry, I spoke too long.
No, it's quite all right. I just feel like I'm the token man on this panel. It's usually the other way around, isn't it? But I'm going to move on, try and get some more questions. We've got about just over 15 minutes left, so we'll try to do this as quickly as we possibly can. I'm going to start at the back this time. A gentleman and a lady stood at the back, and then there's another gentleman, I think, in front of them. Any order, I'm not bothered. If you just get the microphones there.
Is it working?
Can you just introduce yourself as well, please?
My name's Joy Dennis, and until May I was the chair of Arundel and South Downs. I stepped down, I had 5 years. And as you probably know, it's probably the one of the most only seats, probably with over 10,000 majority at this election. So really, I wanted to go to the point about what next for the members and what do they expect. Well, one is respect. And they were treated extremely badly over the last few years by CCHQ. My membership went down from around 1,000 down to around about 750, and it's been declining still. And that's because they feel they're not respected. They were getting emails constantly asking for money, even though they were possibly donating money, but CCHQ didn't know. And the general feeling has been, since this election, is that CCHQ need to start again. And the inquiry into how CCHQ is actually formed and is put together shouldn't be about with internal people. We need external people to look at it. We need people without vested interests. And that's what concerns them at the moment.
Gentleman behind, if we could really keep these questions extremely brief so we can get through quite a few more.
Okay, Brian Murphy from Pembrokeshire, West Wales. My experience is we had a retired police officer who wanted to be a police and crime commissioner candidate. I went for the assessment board. I failed it. On the feedback, he was told that he would make a very good PCC candidate, but not a parliamentary candidate. And that's what he was being assessed on. He had the support of the local associations, and it was a very, very winnable election. We'd won on the first past the post count on the previous 2 times. This year we lost it because we didn't have the right candidate. I would like to know what the panel's view is on selection criteria, why the assessment board is assessing everybody to be a prospective parliamentary candidate when they don't want to be an MP.
Thank you. And then the gentleman, just, where's the microphone? Just the gentleman there just wants to put his hand up. Gentleman wearing the glasses, hands up now. Yeah, if you just get it to him, please.
Thank you. Hello, Gareth Lyon, Group Leader, Rushmore Conservatives. If we genuinely want to empower members and we want to have proper Conservatives and capable candidates coming forward, would the panel support going the whole hog and introducing member primaries at every level, allowing any Conservative member who can win the support of their fellow members to stand for any position?
Claire, do you want to comment on that one?
Well, I definitely, I 100% grassroots driven. They know who the local candidates who do the most good for their local areas. My family actually own regional newspapers as well. So over the years, we've worked with all the local MPs, and by far the best MPs are the ones who are local, who know the local businesses, who know the issues, who've worked with us in the local papers day in and day out. You know, they know whether a church bell needs replacing. They know whether the kids' football team needs new jerseys. And I hate the way CCHQ try and parachute in these people. I actually fought a case in Bromsgrove, just down the road. We own the local paper there, and I heard about it. And we've got a fantastic MP, or we had a fantastic MP who was a potential MP coming up, and everyone loved him. And then suddenly we heard that CCHQ were parachuting in Seb Payne, one of Rishi's mates. So as part of CDO, when I was still running that, I managed to get 100 members there for a vote that night, and we destroyed them, 100 to 2. And we managed to keep our guy, Bradley Thomas. But we've got to be doing this all over the country, because you're right, it's got to be grassroots driven. Of course, there's always going to be the exceptions. You know, sometimes there'll be a superstar somewhere who could be great for an area. But I'm 100% with you.
Yeah, I was just going to say a very similar thing, which I think is a trust-based thing. I think people who know people can communicate the quality and the character and the nature of a character, and that's one of the best ways of understanding whether somebody's going to be a good candidate. So I do think I don't think it has to be only locals, actually. And I think anyone on the candidates list would say that. It's very hard, you know, anyone who's moved once suddenly only has one place they can be a candidate for, and you may have a brilliant MP there, then you're out forever. You can't possibly be the MP for that area. But I think that there must be this interconnectedness between all of us members, talking to each other, saying, look at this young person, or this person who's just been a fantastic doctor and now wants to become an MP, and talking to each other, and so we get the right candidates. Maybe in the West Midlands there's a pool, but just chairmen talking to each other, knowing what they think, and being able to share information, rather than this sense of CCHQ's got their 3 favourites, we're all going to go through a completely bogus process where we all pretend that we're equal. I was given a golden ticket, comprehensive pass, access all areas. It meant nothing in reality. I wasn't allowed, literally was not allowed, clearly was blocked every time I actually tried to go to an association directly. So you're given lots of fake praise, I think, is what happens in reality. And I don't think that's useful. It's very demoralising. So yeah, I think it's important to know each other.
Very briefly, if you could, Wendy. I'm just conscious of the time.
Yes, I suppose I've experienced both. I've been the local candidate and not been successful.
Yeah.
And then I wasn't the most local candidate in the seat that I hold now.
You was in William Hague's seat, weren't you? You was chairman for years.
I was.
And they didn't let her go for it.
But I've got the best seat in the world now, Aldridge-Brownhills. So, but I digress. But just to show the differences. But, I mean, this comes back down to one thing, which is trust in our members. And if you've got that and a fair process, it will work. But if we restore trust, we'll have more candidates coming forward, because that is what we need. We need more candidates from a more diverse range of backgrounds based on meritocracy from right across the country. So we've got a strong pool to fish in, and then our members will also feel empowered. So I think there are some really tangible things and differences that we need to seriously look at undertaking.
I mean, I think we need more candidates with conviction, actually, and I think then we could form a majority. We also need to make sure it's a good fit. Exactly. Because how many times have had some wokey person who's come to a red wall seat in Yorkshire? It's not going to work. So I really think that, as I said, associations need greater selection pull than CCHQ, because they know their areas far better than anybody else. Definitely.
Right, we've got time for 3 more. Oh, good Lord. I'm going to choose this gentleman here. that lady just there, and I'm going to go for that gentleman there at random. So there, this gentleman here, please. And you start.
Okay,
yeah.
hello. My name is Stephen Pearson, Newark constituency. The reform, interested in what Andrea was saying. Firstly, we won against reform in Newark by Robert Jenrick writing a letter to every potential reform voter saying what he was trying to do about immigration and why he wasn't successful. And I think that's why we were the only seat in Nottinghamshire to be retained. But I think you indicated that perhaps reform Conservative joint candidates could go forward. I thought Farage had sort of vetoed that.
Well, not at the time. So, you know, anything was possible. They'll probably veto it now because they've got 5 MPs, haven't they? And going to their conference, it felt like they felt they could take on the world. So I think we're in a different place, unfortunately.
Yes. Microphone. Oh, there we are.
Hello, Wendy Whitaker-Large. I'm the Deputy Chair for Congleton constituency. I applied to be on the list as well last year, but was unsuccessful. I've also worked with Claire at CDO. My question is about an explicit statement of values. Although, Becky, you say that you think everybody knows what it is to be a Conservative, I wonder whether that's really true. And although when we become members we sign up for a code of conduct, is it time to make our values explicit so that we are clear about what we expect people to align to, and that those who are aligning with our message, we know they stand with us and they are Conservatives?
And then the microphone is coming. Yeah, the gentleman. Just this gentleman that's putting his hand up. There we are.
Thank you very much. My name is Georgie and I'm coming from Norwich. My question is very simple. Do you think that we have people on the top level of our party that are actually liberals and socialists pretending to be conservatives because they know their voters are conservative? And that's our biggest problem. These people won't share conservative values because they're not conservatives. Do you think that's the case?
You can, and also I will go to everyone if you could just have some closing remarks as you answer, and then hopefully we'll finish on time.
Yes, I agree with you. I mean, we've had a Prime Minister, or a couple of them, who are certainly more liberal than the Conservatism that I'd like to see. But again, it comes down to CCHQ, their selection process. It comes down to members having a vote. And I would like to see, really, even the party chairman being elected by members. Now, I know Wendy did mention, which she had a good point here, that we have MPs who is on the board, but the issue is they tend to put brown noses on the board who will not challenge. And so what's the point of that? You know, that they don't get a dose of reality. So I think we need to change that aspect as well.
Going to your question about reform, I mean, look at the dreadful job that Labour are doing already. I mean, we're all just, they're useless. In the next couple of years, the right will come together. It's going to happen. 2027, 2028. We can't let it happen again. I mean, Andrea, one of our best MPs ever, a dear friend of mine, and I see all the work she's been doing behind the scenes. I mean, we've lost people like Andrea. We can't ever let that happen again. So something will happen in 2027, 2028. I did actually speak to Nigel Farage about it a couple of weeks ago, and he even admitted to me, he said, the right will come together, Claire. And I said to him on the phone, I was like, Nigel, you've admitted it. So even he's thinking it will happen. We can't let that happen again. As far as, what was the second question I was going to answer? Can't remember. That's it.
Okay, right.
So, you know, I think we would all agree that, as Margaret Thatcher knew and articulated, the party is at its best when it's a broad church that is based on values, but that has a strong leader. And you know, I'm ever the optimist. My glass is not half full; it's always overflowing. Hopefully, not with water. But this comes back to who we are, what our values are. And I made the point in my opening remarks about it's not enough just for Labour to fail. And we've acknowledged as well that Reform got a big chunk of the votes here, but Labour have only got a small extra percentage. It is all to play for, but those of us in Westminster, who so many on the doorstep were angry with, have got a big part to play. We have got to pull together. We've got to work closely with our activists on the ground and remember that we are one family. And our arguments happen indoors, not outside there. Do we have a statement of values? I would argue and say we shouldn't need to have to do that because we all know why we are Conservatives. But maybe we have to remind ourselves why we are Conservative through the policies that we start to develop through our actions and looking at some of those really good examples around the country of hardworking MPs standing up for their communities and some of our really excellent local councillors.
Andrew, can I come in
Yeah.
with this? Hot off the press, Tim Montgomery just tweeted recently today, is very disappointed because William Hague has come out and said he wants to strip members of their say in the leadership elections. Now, isn't this why we are here today and what's wrong with the party? I think this is apt to why this discussion is important, Andrew.
Yeah, so knock me down with a feather on that one.
Sorry, I've just remembered what I was going to say before. Yeah, we may be a broad church, but some of our MPs that we've got at the moment, they're down the lane, they're along the village, into the next village. They're not part of this broad church that we're members of. I mean, people like Wendy, you would have been a fantastic MP. And didn't they say to you that you'd mentioned Brexit or something? You're a Brexiteer, and the adjudicator's eyes or something rolled, and you knew then that your time was up. She wasn't going to get through. So this is what we've got to do. We've got a lot to do in the next 5 years, but we're going to have 200 or 300 seats to fill. So let's do the donkey work now, get those people in place, and we'll be ready to fight.
Yep, I agree with that. I think it's about being conservative, not just a conservative, just small c conservative, as we all know that's how it starts. I'm also a great optimist, and my children give me, and we've just come from the Young Conservatives event an hour ago, and everything about the young Conservative movement at the moment makes me give such hope because they are traditional Conservatives who really believe in things. They're conviction Conservatives. So many of the young under 25-year-olds who I meet all the time through my children are just giving me great hope. So I think there's a lot to play for, and I think we just need to remember that what our values are and not feel at all apologetic about it.
I've got a feeling that this conference is actually going to be quite upbeat. Now, if you'd said to me on the 5th of July that this conference would be more upbeat than Labour's conference, I wouldn't have believed you. But, you look what happened last week, and there's a lot of discontent in the Labour ranks. There's a lot of discontent amongst the voters, voters' remorse, I think, really. But I think this is going to be quite a positive conference, and it really is. As I mentioned earlier, it was a huge defeat. It was massive. But we should not be defeatists. We've got to get our fighting spirit back again. We've got to, and I think particularly what Andrea said, we've got to get some proper Conservatives there. I mean, I was brought up in Bishop Auckland, County Durham. It was a Labour seat, it was a Labour family, it was a Labour region, everything, but I became a Thatcherite. And I specifically said that because I don't think I actually became a Conservative as such. I became a Thatcherite. I believed in what Margaret Thatcher was doing. I loved her style. And I knew that if ever we were in a war, such as the Falklands or anything, she'd be on top of everything. She'd be fighting for Britain. So we need some proper Conservatives back. That's really it from me and my panel. I would just like to thank Becky, Wendy, Claire, and Andrea, and if you could also thank them in the usual way.